Hi, good evening, Sonia.
Hi, Zavher.
And everybody here from Caregiver Saathi, and wishing you a very happy Women's Day. I think today's a really wonderful day that we have you here with us, because I think you embody everything that a really strong woman is about. I've had the pleasure of knowing you for the past so many years, and Sonia, you have been a Saathi to a caregiver and then a caregiver yourself. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Zavher and Caregiver Saathi, for having me on this platform to talk about and share my journey. And before we start today's session, I would like to take this opportunity to wish everyone, all the lovely women out there, a very happy Women's Day. I'm Sonia Suri, and I'm currently living in Baku, Azerbaijan. And I've been moving internationally for my husband's work over the past 15 years. I joined Caregiver Saathi to be able to lend a helping hand to those who might need. My journey made me realize the importance of having someone there. And in my case, I had my husband, who was my support, my backbone. And through my journey, I have now, or if I may say, I've made it my mission to create awareness about my father's disease, which was idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And being an ambassador with Caregiver Saathi has given me a huge learning curve. Thank you so much, Bhavna, for creating this platform for people like us who need the structure and guidance to be able to do things that we could.
That's so lovely, Sonia, and I totally echo your sentiments, as do most of us here. So from what I gather, Sonia, from about 2000, for about 9 years, from 2014 onwards, you were really a great support to Rahul, your husband, as he did back and forth trips to India to look after both his parents, his father, who eventually succumbed, and his mother, who is still alive but has her own issues with falls and breaking bones and getting into hospitals. And how was it like to be able to provide that kind of support to him? What was it for you? How hard was it for you? Because I know initially you were probably, your older son was very small and you were carrying your second child. So how hard was it for you to be a Saathi to Rahul in this time?
Zavher, my husband has really been my, like I said, my strength and my pillar of support. And honestly, if I may say, I learned what it means to be a caregiver from him. As I mentioned, we move internationally every 2-3 years, and we've lived in 6 countries. And since he was the only son for his parents, he was always there when he needed to be. And seeing him do that, I learned when my turn came.
Wonderful, Sonia.
It was challenging. If we want to consider it as a challenge, yes, it was challenging. I could not be there to help him support his parents when his father or my father-in-law was having his back surgeries, because my kids were very small. It was impossible to leave them alone for both of us and to be there. So we took roles. He was the one who was present at the time, and then I was supporting him emotionally. It was hard on him as well, and it was tough. Yes, kids were young. They couldn't understand how frequently dad was going or how it was happening. But I guess this was an upbringing that you give to your children as well. They see you looking after your parents. In my husband's case, he looked after his parents. In my case, I looked after my parents. And I cannot stress enough on this, that, this is the upbringing that we can give to our kids.
That's really wonderful, Sonia. Sonia, I think it was really a very difficult time for you when you learnt about your dad being diagnosed with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. This is something that not many of us know about. I mean, not meaning to demean any other disease, but things like cancer, dementia, Alzheimer's, these are diseases that we come across much more often. So I'm sure the journey running up to his diagnosis also was not an easy one. And once you got to know, I know that you were remote in location, but probably you were ever present. And as you said to me, you felt that you were more present when you were far away, though you made several trips down to, look after your father and be of support to your mother. Can you share with us the challenges of this diagnosis, Sonia, and something about idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis?
So, yeah, Zavher, it was for any child, it would be tough, if you get to know that your father has a terminally ill, a rare progressive terminal illness called idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. That was my father's case. Um, I was the younger one in the family. I had honestly never taken much responsibility until then. I had seen my parents, they had always lived with my grandparents and they had always looked after them. So, besides seeing my husband look after his dad or be present for his dad when he needed, support as a son would do, I even saw my own father do that for his parents.
Right.
My mom, when she got married, she came into a joint family, and till the day my grandparents were there, they lived together.
Yeah.
Having growing up in that household, obviously that was like taken for granted that yes, you looked after your elders.
Right.
So here now, my father's disease is such that diagnosis is very, very challenging. And because the awareness is not there, hence, number one, my mission to raise awareness about this disease. And number two, even more important, because the diagnosis is very challenging. The symptoms are very similar to many other diseases. So even general physicians find it very challenging. Sometimes they don't know about the disease. And that's what I learned through my dad's journey.
Could you share what those symptoms were, Sonia?
So we found out about Papa's illness in 2018, April. I have to say kudos to my mom, who was, she was seeing the deterioration. I was also honestly seeing the deterioration happen with him. He was losing weight, he was losing appetite. He would feel breathless with certain actions, like if after a shower, he would feel really breathless, or after going up the stairs, he would feel very breathless. But he was able to walk he had a very strict regime of going for his walks 35 minutes in the morning, 35 minutes in the evening. So even his family doctor was not able to diagnose. He was not able to understand when a person of his age, his physique, was able to walk so much, why have the challenge to be able to climb stairs?
Right.
Him losing weight was one thing that kind of made me worry about this whole thing. And I pushed mommy to take him to the doctor. So I remember I visited India in 2017 when we celebrated their 50th anniversary. And after that, when I came in the summer with my boys, even though I was staying with my mother-in-law at that time, when I went and visited my father, I did not feel normal. I'm like, I had seen him in February, and then from February to June, seeing that deterioration kind of raised that red flag for me.
Right.
I took him to the doctor, same thing. The doctor made him walk, did his physical examination. We could not diagnose it. Then in 2018, this is sometime in March, because he was still continuing to deteriorate, my mom took him to the doctor again. And at that point, the doctor suggested that we should do X-ray, his lungs X-ray. So when we did the lungs X-ray, he saw some spots, and that prompted him to take the next step. We are very, very thankful to this kind doctor, Dr. Satish Tham, who was able to pick it up in the X-ray. So right after the X-ray, he sent Papa for the CT scan. When the CT scan report came, my mom sent it to me. Now, it so happened that I have a childhood friend who's a senior pulmonologist, Dr. Sakshi Dua. She's based out of New York. And I just sent her my dad's CT scan report just to have a look. She was very, very kind and immediately responded and gave me all the information. Now, yes, for a moment, it was hard because she was very honest. She was very clear. She said, Sonia, he's got the prognosis of this disease. Because the disease is not diagnosed ahead of time, because it's diagnosed in a later stage, because there is no awareness about the symptoms of this disease, it usually gets diagnosed very late. And by then, the patient only has 2 to 3 years left, right, in most of the cases. And same thing happened with my dad. So I was thankful that she gave me all the information as to what testing needs to be done. Because IPF, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, is different from pulmonary fibrosis. So she kind of, told us the steps to take. You need somebody at this, this time who can guide you what you need to do. Now, you could go to the best of the doctors, but you would be very overwhelmed with the language they would speak, the terminology, the tests. Most of us, and I would say even my mother at that time, when we first took my dad to, so let me go back a little bit. Once the diagnosis was done by Dr. Satish Tham, he recommended that we show him to a pulmonologist in Gangaram. I was not able to reach. When I received the information from my friend, I sent it to my brother, and he said he will go. He will be the one who will reach Delhi. He was also out of Delhi. So he said he will make it and he will go for the first appointment. When he was there at the appointment, the pulmonologist wrote the exact same tests that were needed to be done to rule out pulmonary fibrosis in Papa. Now, as normally, people would think that, oh yeah, they've written tests because they want to make money. It's so important that, as caregivers of patients, we realize that not every time it's about money making. Sometimes the diagnosis is very difficult. And to be able to do the right diagnosis, the doctors know what they're doing. That's so true. You're taking your patient to a doctor. Have the faith. Please have the faith from the start. Please have the confidence, and then the journey becomes easy.
Right. So it was a struggle right through his journey for you. And can you tell me how did it impact you? How did it impact your family? You told me that you and your brother chose not to inform your father and your mother about this diagnosis. And was that more hard for you, or were you at peace with it? How did it go for you?
It was hard initially, Zavher. We had to hide it from my mother because I was very worried about, not only me, my brother and I, we were both very worried about our mother's health.
Right.
She gets quite anxious. She's not young too. And for her to be able to know that she's going to lose her husband in the next couple of years would not have helped us in any way. So we decided to not share this information with her. Um, we were at peace because we knew that whatever time they are spending or whatever time my dad had, they will spend happily rather than just worrying about something is going to happen to him. So that was the reason we had it was for our family, it worked. It would have worked for the better, because if mom would have known, it would have been very
Very
difficult
hard.
to manage two patients.
And Sonia, you told me that the medication for the pulmonary fibrosis was actually making him very sick. And there was a point when you and your brother, with holding the hands of your doctor, took the decision to stop that medication and give him a good quality of life. I think that was a very brave, it was extremely brave on your part. Could you share with us about that time?
So my dad got diagnosed with the disease in 2018 April, and this was in February 2019 that we took the decision, because we saw so the medication for this disease is basically to slow down the progression of the disease. It does not cure it. Now, it comes with a lot of side effects, and in my dad's case, it was diarrhea. He had already lost a lot of weight. He had no appetite. He was really shrinking. And at that point, seeing him suffer with bouts of diarrhea every 2-3 days, just simply because of the medication that was going in, was very hard. So I decided to go and see his pulmonologist and speak to him, asking his advice first. What do I do? Because this is what my dad's situation was. So he recommended we do another CT scan and see if, after taking the medication over 6 months, if there has been any slowing down of the disease. We did not see any of that. Right. Instead, his disease was progressing. So he said that he said it was only sense that we stop the disease if we as a family were okay with it. Stop with the medicine. My father, even though I said to you, we did not share the main diagnosis. He knew he had a lung disease. He knew that it was, his lungs were compromised, but he did not know that he had less time. Even though we did that, we did not share that big information. And for some families, some people will say that it was not right. He should have had that knowledge. He should have been able to decide what. He was the one who decided he did not want the medication.
Yes.
He did not know that he had less time, but he took the decision that he was fed up of this medication that was giving him all these troubles. So he just simply, we was like, I just want to stop this medicine. So, and, we just, yes, my brother and I did not say it to him, but he was older than us. He was our father. At that age, they know what's happening. I mean, he was the one who was suffering. He would have probably, guessed at what situation he was in as well.
How did it make you feel? I mean, it must have been very hard. Did you have the support of friends, family?
I had a lot of support, Zavher, from my husband and my children. I cannot stress enough on this. Out of the 18 months that my father was there after his diagnosis, I was in India for 9 months, maybe close to 10 months, actually. My son was about 12, 13 years of age. The older one was in boarding, but the younger one was 12, 13 years of age. My husband, as you know, he's a hotelier, and hoteliers have very long working hours.
Right.
Does not matter what stage of career you're in, it just is never ending. Still, he managed the house, he managed the son. And not only that, when my father was hospitalized the first time in 2018 in December, he joined me. Complete surprise. I did not know. He just showed up at the hospital at the most crucial time of a hotelier for the year that they have during Christmas.
And at that time, your mother was hospitalized too in another room.
Yeah, so I was in a situation so this was the first exasperation that my IPF exasperation that my dad had in 2018 December. Just 2 weeks before this, my brother took him to Gangaram Hospital. We had an excellent pulmonologist, Dr. Basu, there. My dad saw him. He went without oxygen. He spent traveling time from Gurgaon to Gangaram 1.5 hours back and forth, waiting there to see the doctor. 4-5 hours, my dad was without oxygen. And 2 weeks later, he was in the hospital, well, not in the ICU first, but he was in the hospital with a huge oxygen increments that they had to put him on high level of oxygen. Mom called me and I said, okay, you take him to the hospital. I will reach tonight. I was in Dubai. It was just one flight. I booked myself. I left in the afternoon. Morning, I got a call around 10:30, 11. I was in the flight at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Straight went to the hospital. Next day, saw his situation. The doctors had put him on steroids and he was starting to stabilize.
And how much longer did it take, Sonia? A year?
A year, exactly a year after that. This was December 2018, and then December 2019, he left us.
And in between this, I know that your mother-in-law had faced some challenges and you had to make some trips to also take care of her.
Yeah, so this is December 2018 that Papa was in the hospital. And then I realized at that time, after 2 days, I spent a day with my mom and realized she was in a bad condition. She was coughing and bad cold, and she had been on antibiotics. Nothing had helped her. So I insisted that I wanted to bring her to the hospital, admit her so that she could be treated as well, because I couldn't be at home while I'm in the hospital with my father.
I understand.
So brought mommy to the hospital. Both of them were hospitalized in the same hospital in different rooms. Thankfully, mom, after a couple of days, started to respond well to the medications. But at that time, Papa deteriorated. So he needed to be moved into ICU. Now, when he went to the ICU, the doctor came and spoke to me. You know, his disease was a lung disease. So they came and spoke to me about ventilator. Now, again, here, being the younger one in the family, had never taken such decisions, had never taken responsibility until then. Suddenly, I'm being asked, if something goes wrong, would you want to put your father on ventilator? It was very hard. I was not ready for that.
I know nobody is ever, Sonia, but I know you were his princess. He always called you that. And
yeah.
I can fully understand how hard it was for you. But I think you took that
Anyhow,
brave decision.
I was very, very fortunate that I had excellent neighbors.
Right.
I think my parents really did something so good in their lives that they have neighbors who are more than family for us.
Right.
So even though unfortunately, my brother was not able to reach when Papa was in ICU, my neighbor, Bhaiya, he was there.
They supported your decision.
He was there with me the entire time. I cannot thank you enough, Vinod Bhaiya, but so I immediately called my brother because I was not comfortable taking the decision, and we decided that no, we will not put him, as the doctor advised, we will not put him on ventilator. Thankfully, he did not need to. He responded well to the medications, and next day he was out of ICU.
Right.
So we brought mommy home after a few days. Papa came home. And they were settling. Papa was settling. They were both in different rooms, even in the house, because I didn't want mom's infection to get to Papa. I was settling them down, and so this is end of December, beginning of January. In a couple of weeks, trying to settle everything at home, I got a call from my mom-in-law that she had gone to the bank and she's had a fall. And while she was telling me, I could make out she's in a lot of pain when she's speaking to me. So she didn't say that she would go to the doctor right away. I told her I will come. I was out running some errands for my parents, but I said, as soon as I get home, I will leave and I will come over to see her. Then after 15 minutes, mom-in-law called again and she said, Bede, I'm going to get my x-ray done with a friend of hers. And I said, okay, mom, you go. You come back, get your x-ray done, get home, and I will reach immediately. In the meantime, obviously informed my husband and packed up my bags to go to my mom-in-law's place. When I reached there, she had an attendant for her and her very dear friend, she was there as well. And I saw the attendant, the way she was. So my mom-in-law, the x-ray confirmed that it was a fracture. Now, my mom-in-law wanted to go to the hospital the next day. It was already late evening. And she said, we'll stay the night at home and next day we will go to the hospital. So when I saw the attendant trying to give her a bedpan, the way she was moving mom, I was just not comfortable. I was very worried that if she stays the night and if the fracture develops into a multi-fracture or something else goes wrong at that point, I spoke to my husband and I said, I would be more comfortable if we can take mommy to the hospital and she can have proper care. So this is one more thing where, people try to avoid being in the hospital for whatever reasons they may have. But I, at that time, felt that it was the most important thing that she was physically looked after.
Right.
Even none of us were trained to do that. I was not, the attendant was not, nobody was trained for that. So I spoke to my husband, he agreed on that. I spoke to my mom-in-law's friend, she agreed. And then I talked to mom-in-law and she agreed very willingly.
Yeah.
She said, let's go.
And so then you went to the army hospital, I gather.
Correct.
And what were the differences you found in, being with an army hospital and a private hospital with your parents? Did you face any challenges, or did you think the care was the same at both places?
I would honestly say from the medical perspective, they looked after my mom-in-law excellent. It was just excellent.
Right. Great.
No doubts about it. I mean, you cannot get better care than, and I experienced in the same year, private hospital and military hospital. Not to demean or bring down private hospital, I have to say that the Columbia Asia Hospital in Gurgaon, where my father was, both my parents were admitted, really, really supported us. Like, I have no words to thank them as well. But the care that my mom-in-law got medically was excellent in Army Hospital. The difference was that they don't let patient's attendants stay there. So but you need to just trust the organization. You just need to trust the doctors, the nurses. They know what they're doing. They're very well qualified. Trust them. And the one thing that worked really wonders for me, even though they don't allow attendant to stay overnight with the patient, even actually during the day, they don't even allow, they have visiting hours. But I was fortunate, I was able to build relationships with the staff there, and that worked wonders for me.
That's wonderful, Sonia.
I had WhatsApp numbers and, I had phone numbers. Doctors were so kind. They were even willing to share. So I was able to stay there most of the time, but if I was not there, I knew I had the resources whom I could reach out to, and I had the confidence they would help.
Sonia, going back to your dad, you said that you read extensively about idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis and also joined certain support groups. How did that help you in your journey?
So I'll talk about this first in relation to my mom-in-law as well. And I cannot emphasize less on learning about the problem, the disease, or the sickness, or whatever you want to call it, that your patient has. In my mom-in-law's case, when I would speak to the doctors, they knew that what I'm saying, I know about it. And same goes with my father's journey. IPF, so my mom-in-law's was a fracture. IPF is a very rare disease. Does not matter if it is known or an unknown thing. Just empower yourself with the knowledge. So when you speak to them, the medical professionals, they speak to you on that level.
Right. That's
I
amazing.
joined a lot of Facebook groups for my father's disease. I went on a lot of websites. First thing was my friend who really, gave me a lot of information and help. And then she prompted me to go and look up online on the disease, which I did. Then I joined a lot of Facebook groups, which are caregiver groups. It is amazing how everybody who's suffering with the same or has someone suffering with the same disease is able to connect, is able to relate, is able to guide people as to what to do. I did not know a single person on that group, but I could ask questions. I could just put anything and everybody would respond. There's a lady, I really have to mention her name here, Ms. Delina Coach. She's the one who initiated this Facebook page that I'm part of. It's Pulmonary Fibrosis by Breath Support. Wonderful, wonderful people. How they reach out, it does not. Sometimes people would just vent out, Zavher. Sometimes people just wanted to cry, whether it was patient, whether it was caregiver.
So important.
They just needed someone to be able to hear you. And the amount of response and the support that you got, it was amazing. For me to be able to manage my father's disease and his journey in the way that I was able to, I'm only thankful to these groups that I was part of, that I got so much knowledge. I learned so much about the disease. And then again, when I would speak to his pulmonologist, whether in Columbia, Asia, or in Gangaram, Dr. Basu, or Dr. Piyush in Columbia, Asia, they knew I know about it.
Right, Sonia. And I know that
cannot stress enough, please learn, for whoever is going through this, please learn about what your patient is suffering from.
And I know that you spent a lot of the last 6 months of, your dad's life, and you shared with me about how you were actually moving house and you're unpacking boxes, and your husband said, Sonia, what are you doing here? You need to be with your dad. And I think this point that you have brought out is so wonderful, that spouses and families understand each other and support each other in this journey. And I'm forever grateful to Rahul for this, for taking so good care of you on this front as well. Sonia, you lost your father. It was a very hard time for you. In a few weeks of losing your father, or maybe even less than that, you tried to relocate your mother, and you went back, and in a short while you were back again with a diagnosis of breast cancer for her. This should have been one of the hardest blows for you, because as you told me that she was probably brewing it in the last 6 months of your father's life, but you were all so consumed by looking after your father that somehow perhaps this was missed. I hope that you have no feelings of guilt for it. I know that your mother is doing well now. And I think, again, resources like Caregiver Saathi, if they were holding your hand at that time, it might have been a different story. But could you share briefly about your mother's journey and also her journey with Parkinson's?
Yeah, so within 3 months of losing my dad came this big jolt. I was not ready for this, Zavher.
I know.
I had not been able to grieve my father's loss. I could not show emotions or share emotions with my mom because she would have not been able to handle my grief at that point. And then suddenly her diagnosis came. Why so late? Even though she was complaining of it a few months, in the last few months of my dad's illness, because like you rightly said, we were completely consumed with Papa's sickness. So when mom complained in mid-February that, I'm not, I feel a lump is there, I immediately, I said, okay, I've done enough for Papa now. You know what, I need to, whether it is anything or it's nothing, I need to take her to the doctor and get it checked up so it's ruled out. We went to the doctor and immediately he diagnosed it. He said, this lump is not good. It is not to be there. You need to get a biopsy done to remove it. And once we remove it, we will send it to the lab to check. And I don't know, I think I'm blessed that every doctor that I get is really, really a good doctor. Again, here, found an amazing doctor who diagnosed it pretty early. Thankfully, it had not spread into her breast. So she was still at an early stage. We got the biopsy done. So the lump was taken out when we did the biopsy. It had not spread in the breast, but still her oncologist surgeon, Dr. Tyagi from Yashoda Hospital in Ghaziabad, again, I cannot thank them enough, but the way he explained to me, he said, Sonia, breast cancer, in a lot of cases, we have seen it reoccur. Now, we cannot give chemotherapy to your mom, so we will remove the breast. It all happened at a time when COVID was showing its presence around the world. I remember the first day of the Bharat Bandh, and the next day I took mommy to the hospital in Ghaziabad. I got admitted, we got the surgery done. It was a bit difficult after the surgery for her, but she came out of ICU, she was brought home, faced a lot of challenges, but I had attendant for mommy, and I had an attendant for my father and for my mother. I did not shy from having that attendant. And in a lot of cases, I see people who don't get an attendant and they think that themselves doing it is the right way to do it. Sometimes we do not know. Like in my mother-in-law's case, the way the attendant was lifting her up to give her the bedpan, I didn't feel comfortable. So sometimes we don't know how to do these things. So I had an attendant for mom. My brother has been a huge support. He has financially supported my mom, my father through their sickness, through their, paying for the attendance, medications, stuff like that. So again, can't thank him enough, but I knew that I needed help and I won't be able to manage without an attendant. So
and she seems to have come through with the breast cancer, but it's now the
has.
Parkinson's that's taking over. Sonia, I salute you today, really. And I feel that, as I said to Bhavna, I don't know how to describe our relationship. And I just feel so proud that you have handled each and every of these illnesses, each one so different from the other. And you have, not given short of yourself to look after whoever it may have been. I just want to ask you, Sonia, as a caregiver, what were the main challenges that you faced, maybe mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually? How did it affect you?
The biggest challenge ever was that I was not with my family. There
Okay.
were extensive periods of times where I had not seen my son. And, it was the formative years of his schooling life, his academic life. He was in the middle school. Obviously, not being around my husband, he went through his time where, he was waiting for his promotion to become the general manager. He got that, and we were not together for a long time. I have to say that, the boys in my house, my family, not once did they ask me, when are you coming back? Not once, whether it was my younger boy, Zavher, my older son. There was a time in my older son came home in Dubai for the summer, and I was not there. I was with Papa because I knew Papa had limited time. So I just wanted to spend as much time as possible with him. But thankfully, none of them ever asked me. So that kind of took a huge, that was a huge relief for me. Emotionally dealing with the fact that we were hiding a big thing from mommy and papa. And if it would happen at a time when neither me or my brother are there, how well would they be to be able to manage? But again, like I said, in India, the neighborhood system is still so prevalent. I am so fortunate that my parents have amazing neighbors who were their support, their lifeline. Challenges were getting medications at times. Challenges were finding the right attendance. Challenges were being able to get the right doctors, having the support systems. And I think what Caregiver Saathi is doing, providing all of these that I just mentioned, what Bhavna, as she says, her vision is to be able to provide a place where people can go to and get information, a one-stop information place, is just amazing, because there was nothing, I had to just dig in. And when you look at the net, you have so much available. You're not sure if I'm getting an attendant from a particular agency, if it will be okay, or it's going to be risky, or what it is. So having this kind of a platform that Bhavna's vision is, that to be able to provide that information to people, is amazing.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Is there anything else you'd like to share? It's been wonderful.
One thing
to
that
have
I would
you.
like,
Sure.
the one thing that I would like to say to all the caregivers right now who are there in their journeys, please reach out for help. Please, please, please reach out for help. It's not possible to do it. And don't be shy. Don't feel embarrassed if you can't do it. And if someone else does it for you, please ask for help.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you for being here with us and sharing your story, and all strength to you.
Thank you, Zavher. I've only learned all this from you.
Oh, so, thank you so
your
much.
journey is not hidden from me as well, and what I've learned from you, I think I was a little baby when we.
I know. It's a great feeling of camaraderie, sisterhood, and brotherhood that we have with Caregiver Saathi. And
yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nabila.
Thank you so much, Zavher. Thank you,
Sonia.
Thanks a lot. Take